So now to what we were
Let's get this over with.
Also, just the reason why it's all Flyers is because on our deep dive series, we are up to Philadelphia. So even though it's a Philadelphia kind of podcast, Flyers wise, we do still do it for this one, but we're going to do it differently than how we've done every other one, just because in this case we can actually go deeper in a sense than some of these other teams because this is obviously the team we follow. So because of that, we can put a little more insight as much as we really can on this team's struggles and everything. And the way we're going to think about doing it is kind of breaking up in three ways because if you talk to any, Philadelphia fan, they have their idea of what the Flyers are struggling with and everything. So we're going to break it down from management, the coaching, and the players kind of way.
And not just on the Flyers, by the way. That includes the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, who are kicking ass right now.
Mm-hmm. But we're going to save that for like the players kind of aspect. Just some of their struggles here or struggles here and there, what they could do differently that can maybe bounce Flyers into, relevancy again and or to even remotely like the team they were last season or whenever. Because it's weird because I'm just going to start it off just as a whole. It seems like to me this Flyers team, this way the season has been, it's like they haven't gotten out of that Islander series from the playoffs that they got eliminated from. Like they've squeaked by wins at the beginning. Like even at the beginning of the season, they weren't playing well, but they were getting the results. Like they were constantly getting outplayed. They were constantly getting outshot.
They weren't hustling for the puck. They weren't winning the battles up against the boards.
But they were getting timely goals, and they were actually getting, benefited by the hockey gods. And now the hockey gods are like, all right, I gave you enough of a bone. It's time for you to suck. It's time for you to suck. The unfortunate thing was the COVID kind of, the little 2-week span where they had the little COVID outbreak, which caused them to miss a couple of games, which has kind of caused them to have this busy March and everything. So because of that, it's a little bit of why maybe the struggles. But to start it out, there's a lot because we're about a month away from the trade deadline in the NHL. Because of the season and everything, the trade deadline obviously got pushed back. So because of that, it is now going to be, in late April. I forget what the actual date is. I think it's the 27th of April.
For what? I'm sorry?
The NHL trade deadline.
Oh, no, it's April 12th, my friend.
12th. So we're a little less than a month away. Sorry. So because of that, obviously more trade rumors and everything have been spiraling. So let's actually take a look back to not just that, but because I know people are putting a lot of flame on Chuck Fletcher. I kind of have a little bit too. So kind of transitioning a bit to the management side of what we're going to break down. So since being hired a couple seasons back now, he still hasn't really blown up the team any. The only real high value player he traded away was Wayne Simmons, and which in all sense.
And again, he didn't even get that much back in return.
It's that, and also it's also in hindsight probably a good trick because Wayne Simmons has kind of trailed off a bit since that time. Injuries have kind of played a role in that, but he hasn't been the player he was when he was on the Flyers. So
right, but here's my thing: when Chuck Fletcher came in, he was in a very tough spot right away. He had replaced Ron Hextall, and also to be fair, to give him credit, he did give Dave Hextall a chance to try to fix the team and coach. That didn't happen. Took a week or so. Not even. He got the boot as well. He came in, and again, the first made he made with the Flyers. Let me actually go to his trades here. Let me go back. He had traded. Okay, I'll put it this way. His first real trade, he made a couple minor trades. His first real trade was Wayne Simmons to the Nashville Predators, also shaving off $3.975 million cap hit for Philadelphia. They did retain some salary there, $875,000. Or no, I'm sorry, they didn't retain anything. They got rid of that contract. They got Ryan Hartman and a conditional 4th round pick. The condition was to upgrade it to 2023 round pick if Nashville won one round in 2018-19 playoffs. They did not. They lost in the first round against Dallas. So he received a 4th round pick, which the pick was used to draft Timo Nickel, but I don't even believe he was drafted by us. He's currently with the Anaheim Ducks.
Oh, there you
go. Yeah, one of his best trades was later in June. Actually, 2 of his best trades. He traded a 5th round pick for the rights of Kevin Hayes, which, let's be honest, turned out pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
He then traded Radko Gudas and retained 30% of his salary for Matt Niskanen, and that was a huge, huge win there, despite it being, unfortunately, a 1-year kind of trade, because lo and behold,
they're obviously hoping for more, but
which again, it shocked everyone. Matt Niskanen retired during the offseason, which no one was expecting. This one at the time, I really liked the trade. I did agree that we gave out way too much for him, but I liked it at the time. A 2nd and a 3rd round pick for Justin Braun, but then the more I thought, I'm like, well, I actually really hate this.
I will give him the benefit of the doubt here. Last season, actually in season, he played okay. He was actually a good defenseman last season. It wasn't towards like the latter half of the season where he started to struggle, especially in the playoffs. But I can make that same argument for Matt Niskanen. The whole time while we had Matt Niskanen, he played great. But when the bubble came around, which wasn't just him too, it seemed like all the veterans kind of took a little while to get their feet going. Niskanen was one of them.
Yeah. And then the Flyers in the 2019 NHL draft actually had the 11th overall pick, which is pretty dang high for them. They actually dropped down 3 spots because they traded with the Arizona Coyotes. They still got their guy Cam York, but on top of that, you got to give Chuck Fletcher a lot of credit here. They acquired a 2nd round pick.
I believe they didn't have a 2nd round pick then. So
because they traded their original 2nd round pick to San Jose as part of the Justin Braun deal, and then let's see. Oh, this is, in my opinion, an underrated trade. He traded Ryan Hartman, who he had originally acquired, to the Dallas Stars for Tyler Pitlick, and got
that was a really good 4th line. He had
he had a very solid 1 year with the Flyers, but again, a very, very solid year.
Yep, and everything else. And then you have last season's trade acquisition, which I think even on air during our trade deadline special. The Nate Thompson one,
thrilled with them.
I think the Derek Grant one we were a little okay with more, just because the 4th line center that could, in that season he was providing offense. So in that sense, we were okay with that one. It was the Nate Thompson one we were both like, especially me. I was like,
and then this is actually, so the 4th round pick we were wondering earlier how it ended up going to the Ducks as part of the conditional pick for Ryan Hartman. This is where I ended up. The Flyers traded Kyle Crisilo, who's an AHL guy, in a 4th round pick, which again was from that Ryan Hartman deal, for Derek Grant.
Yes. And everything else since then has been kind of minor.
Yes.
Nothing really done this past offseason. Some more draft moves. But one thing that hasn't really happened was, he wasn't really busy this off season.
He wasn't. He re-signed Phil Myers, Nolan Patrick. The only big move he had, unfortunately, his hands were tied. He re-signed Justin Braun.
Especially, it was more so just because they lost Niskanen.
Yeah.
Which, that came out to a surprise to everyone. Maybe that's why you see, at least, you can make an argument for why there's a little struggle there. I kind of figured there'd be a little more hatred towards.
Yeah, they did sign Eric Gustafsson, who's turned out to be kind of a huge waste of time. Unfortunately, I was excited for the Flyers to,
there's a lot of moves Chuck Fletcher has made, 3 of them that I can name off the top of my head: Ryan Hartman, Nate Thompson, and Eric Gustafsson, in which I was like, at the time. And
I,
it's one of those things where, like,
for one, was
I'm
going
to give him the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not very high on this. And then Ryan Hartman's first game, great. After that, plummet.
Yeah, unfortunately, Hartman didn't do too well here in Philly in a short time here. I, for one, I like his game. I would always welcome him on any team if I was a GM, because he's playing much better now. Currently in Minnesota, he's been playing probably one of the best he might have played so far. He's still rather young career. He's 25 or 26 only. He was actually a late first round pick, 30th overall in the NHL. 2015, the year the Blackhawks, if it wasn't 15, it was 2013. It was 2013. Sorry, the year the Blackhawks won the Cup, 30th overall, and he was a hometown Chicago kid. He was excited, and and I actually watched his NHL debut live, or not his debut. Sorry, I got to see him score his first career NHL goal live on TV, which is pretty neat. And he looked explosive that game against Nashville. And before you know it, they shipped him off to Nashville, and before you know it, Nashville shipped him off to us. But
again, it is what it is. They shipped him off here because he wasn't really producing much, hoping for a new home or whatever they would do it.
Yeah,
Flyers wasn't
this is already, I think, like his fifth team in the NHL: Chicago, Nashville, us, technically Dallas.
Yep.
And then he signed with Minnesota. Yes. So theoretically, it's his fifth. Mm-hmm. So
yes, a lot of the moves he made this past offseason was re-signings, but he didn't. It's similar to, believe it or not, Ron Hextall's last year. And that offseason, you're hoping he would make a bigger splash, but all he really did was bring in JVR, which right now it's great because he's playing really well and everything. But it didn't really address some needs they needed. In that season, it was goaltending. And this season, the defense seems to be very amiss, especially since I'll put it to this sense, because I know Philadelphia fans were very thrilled of how that Eagles season went. This past season, it's pretty much Ivan Provorov, even though he hasn't played great here and there, he has pretty much been the Jason Kelce of the Eagles offensive line last season, which pretty much every game it's been, he is with someone else. And yeah, Provorov is a good defenseman, but he's not at this level yet where he can do it on himself, all on his own. He needs some comparable defender with him, not a revolving door. And unfortunately, no one on this team so far has really taken that realm, taken that step to be, okay, I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to be that number one guy. It started maybe thinking, oh, maybe it'll be Phil Myers, but Phil Myers hasn't really panned out to be that because...
Yeah, it's been a little frustrating this year for Phil Myers and Travis Sanheim as well have been pretty disappointing. I'm not going to lie.
I actually was.
However, a lot of people were saying they would not mind making Sanheim expendable.
See, I disagree because to me at times I feel like Sanheim has been the more consistent out of our defensemen, even though he's had iffy moments here and there, sure, but for a bad defensive core, I feel like him and Provorov have kind of been the more consistent of the defensemen, even though I think some stats have shown that Braun has actually not played horribly this year, even though the eye test appears to be differently because he gets turned around constantly. There's definitely about bad things happening here and there, but you can put it at Chuck Fletcher here where he didn't really address that issue, which realistically you thought, well, how big of a loss is Matt Niskanen? But apparently it's a
very big loss
because not only was not that Matt Niskanen was like this great defenseman, he was a solid defenseman in what he was able to do, but he was also a leader, so he could teach and mentor Provorov while he was there, and because of that, Provorov was able to relax and to
not have so much pressure on him.
Yeah, and the game just came naturally to him at that point. But this year, I think people were probably thinking he'd regressed again, but I think it's just because of the revolving door next to him and just everything else.
He doesn't have a consistent defensive partner. You can't. Yeah. Sure, he hasn't looked his best, but at the same time, you can't completely blame him for having an awful year.
Chuck Fletcher has said that it takes, especially this past offseason, takes two sides to make a deal. Sure.
Yeah.
But you're telling me you couldn't give the contract that Brody got from the Maple Leafs to bring him over here? Because to me, because I don't know how much you're really talking to Brody. You're probably more so talking to his agent. Your pitch should not just be, okay, would you rather, obviously it's Toronto, so a lot of people, especially Canadian, want to play for a team like Toronto or whatever because it's a Canadian team. But the spiel you can put or to try to lure people into Philadelphia is also, one, they had the cap space to be able to pay, but also we, unlike some of these other teams, may give you a better chance at actually going for a cup. If your goal is to win a ring, we could maybe be that team that could help. You could help us.
Not only that, but the huge bonus is, again, for a guy like TJ Brody, for me, he's a top 4 defenseman easily. No doubt about it. However, on a lot of teams' rosters, depending on which roster they're on, he might unfortunately not be able to crack their top 4, lineup because again, they have a lot of, well, no, I'm saying with the Flyers he can easily. But my point is, if I was Chuck Fletcher, talking to his agent saying, hey, look, TJ, I think you're a great defenseman. We would love to have you. Not only that, we can guarantee top 4 minutes, if not even from time to time, a lot on the top pair line with
not necessarily completely guarantee you, but we can almost guarantee you a playoff spot. If not, maybe what you saw this past season, we went farther than Toronto.
This is very true. And not only that, you're a win away from the conference finals, which hasn't happened since 2010, since they last went to the conference finals.
Similar to how obviously college recruiters do for like college football or something like that. See that we may give you a good chance if your goal is to win a championship or be the star guy. We got it. If you want to be in a big city, it's Philadelphia. I know some guys kind of crack under that pressure. Panarin seems to be the one guy that the Rangers get that didn't do that yet, which I don't think is going to be. But anyways, back to the Flyers. So what can Chuck Fletcher now do to try to right this ship? Is it just to hold strong and hopefully this is just little rough patches the Flyers are in, or is it one of those things where this season, similar to last season, just throw an asterisk on just because of how difficult it is? Not saying this is an issue for the Flyers or maybe an issue or whatever. I'll save it for when we talk the players because it fits more so then. But maybe you move. I know I've always, because we text constantly about getting Ekholm, and obviously he's the highest. Yeah, probably the best defenseman out there you can maybe get at the deadline. But I'm kind of biased on that because I've been a Ekholm fan since they went to the Cup Finals a couple of seasons back. And I've always liked that defense. And if we could get Ekholm, that's just one of those things that I would just enjoy.
Not only that, he's not as old as people think he's. I mean, he's an unbelievable contract. The time is now to get him. Yeah, especially if Nashville's completely.
It is, but it's one of those things where it's kind of early on in terms of getting the deals out there, what you want for this player, and obviously at the moment it's going to be very high price or whatever. But the Flyers do have pieces to kind of sell off.
They do.
Because realistically, Chuck Fletcher has been another Ron Hextall. Because he's been another guy who's like, we can do it with the team we have, with the talent that's coming up. We can still do it with this team we have. But I still think in order to get that next level, I still think you need to bring someone in.
Absolutely. And again, it always comes down to how much are you willing to give up.
I would love to get Ekholm if you can, but obviously there's a huge headache there in terms of what you do expansion-wise and who you protect if you do 3 defensemen or 4.
Another thing that you could always consider is a rare 3-way team trade to really get the piece that you want.
That's what I would do if I was Chuck Fletcher. And I know a lot of people are kind of turned off by that just because of how Riley Smith and everything kind of panned out for the Vegas coming from Florida. I know there's that kind of issue where it's like, I don't want to have another situation like that happen. But I would seriously consider it if you're really that worried about it.
I'll put it this way. A couple years ago, the Colorado Avalanche, they made out like bandits when they traded Matt Duchene. I'll bring up that trade and just so people can understand. Now, obviously, depending on what the trade is and everything, for certain, for who's trading who and who's involved in the trade, what assets you have to give up, but. For Matt Duchene, he had a lot of value, and there's no doubt about it. And they
probably still have some value. I'm sure he might be on the market too.
Yes, and not only that, but the Colorado Avalanche made out like bandits. So the full trade was, let me bring it up here. So Ottawa acquired Matt Duchene and Julius Bergman. Nashville acquired Kyle Turris. Here's what the Colorado Avalanche acquired, and this is, I'll split it between what they acquired from the Senators and what they acquired from Nashville. From the Senators, they acquired Andrew Hammond, Shane Bowers, a former first-round pick, a first-round pick in 2019, which turned out to be Bowen Byram, a third-round pick in 2019, to turn out to be Matthew Steinberg. That's from Ottawa. From Nashville side, Samuel Girard, who's one of their better defensemen now, a second-round pick, and Vladislav Kamenev. And they made out like bandits. Now, I'm not saying that one team's going to have to give up 4 assets. And I'm not saying Nashville's going to get 7 pieces in a trade with a 3-way team. You never know what you have to offer. But the point is, though, if you're really desperate to try to get a guy, and I could realistically see not only one 3-way team trade, but multiple 3-way team trades at this year's deadline to make deals work because of cap issues, especially with COVID going on and everything, and also the cap not getting raised at all. Really, there could be a couple 3-way team trades, and one of them I would predict would be between the Philadelphia Flyers, Nashville Predators, and honestly, I hate to even say this, but there's a chance with the Boston Bruins as well in there. I don't know what team would have to offer what, because I know it's no secret that the Bruins are hurting on defense.
As are we.
And again, both are in the running for Mattias Ekholm. They lost out on Pietrangelo. They lost Torrey Krug, and they lost Zdeno Chara. So if they don't go after someone like Ekholm, they could still be involved with the defenseman from Nashville as well. Or, again, depending on what we have to offer, it never hurts to ask what we got. I mean, yes, we're in the same division, but that's only this year. Yes, we are rivals and everything.
We wouldn't make a trade with Boston.
You never know.
I've seen it's going to be a pick or a setting Zach Ronaldo for draft picks. That's what it's going to be.
That's my favorite. Hey, you never know. I'm not saying the Flyers would trade a defenseman to the Bruins. I'm saying, again, it could be a pick, but those 3 teams are likely to be involved in some kind of trade. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying just it's a possibility.
See, I think if you're talking about expansion and you're worried about what happens then, I think then you make a deal with Seattle. Because to me, I think that's just the best deal or best way to do it. That's not as much of a headache. Like, it's a headache, but it's like, okay. Because either way, I think you're going to have issues with how you go about doing this. Or in terms of the deadline or all those moves anyways.
So many questions, though. It's a huge headache.
Yeah. We already have guys who have no move clause and everything. Obviously, there's a couple guys here and there that aren't eligible for it. I think Farabee's not eligible for it, thank God.
No.
But Phil Myers and Sanheim and Provorov, those 3 are. So if you bring in Ekholm or anyone else for that matter, it's got to be either you got to protect them or potentially be okay with, or you do 4 and you leave out Giroux or someone.
Right.
Because it's really difficult. So I think the best way is simply just to make a deal. in my case, I still think my guess is still going to be Scott Lawton. I think it's Lawton that's going over.
And I think it's a very realistic possibility. And I disagree. I think honestly, I think Gostisbehere is going to get traded. Again, he could be a part of that huge Ekholm deal that we might see happen. I don't know, because again, let's be honest, Ghost, he's been playing much, much better with a lot of confidence. He's been putting up points, not only that, but he's been scoring goals, which is great to see from an offensive defenseman like him. So, yeah.
It's one of those headaches every team has to go through, and I think that's why maybe you don't see any really early trades happening yet, because it's like, okay, well, if we trade this guy, then we're going to have to either protect someone else or risk losing someone else that we feel is a little more vital. Mm-hmm. I'm not just talking about Flyerson's terms, I'm just talking about everyone's sense. Because even when you talked to Weber on a couple podcasts ago, he was even saying for the Nashville that would be Ekholm that would probably be taken. So again, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't think you should necessarily care, but it's like you should try to do something, and you don't even have to do that big of a splash, because you could easily just try to get another defenseman similar skill set to Niskanen, because I don't think you need necessarily just a star-studded defenseman like Ekholm would be great, but maybe you can get someone maybe not as expensive, but still just as reliable, top four, that can be comparable to Provorov and can kind of, ease things back there. It has a little bit of veteran or leadership quality in him that maybe Provorov can learn off of, anything like that. Because there's going to be guys out there. And the thing that was great about that Niskanen trade and what Chuck Fletcher has done so far is that he hasn't made big splashes yet. Everything he's done that's worked out for the Flyers has been little things.
Yeah.
So it's up to him to be if he's ready to make that splash, or what, because I think at the moment he's got to start lighting that match to get that fuse going there. But enough about management.
There's a lot of different opportunities.
Yeah, enough about that. Let's move on to the coaching.
Yeah,
and everything.
Alain Vigneault, Mike Yeo, and Michel Therrien is the quote-unquote three-headed monster that we saw last year. There's times where they were phenomenal. Obviously, AV's the head coach.
Never that power play, but
penalty kill. Huh?
That power play has never looked great with Michel.
Yeah, and Mike Yeo is power play coach. I like Mike Yeo as an assistant coach.
You said
Mike Yeo, I like him as a coach and more specifically as an assistant coach. It's time to either switch him to PK, where he would be better, or no, I thought that was
Michel Therrien is power play.
Yeah, no, that's right. I lied.
You complain about Therrien all the time about the power play.
I keep forgetting. But
so this year, unlike last year, because even though the Flyers power play has kind of picked it up a bit, a lot of it has to do with Ghost actually kind of finding his game again, which is one of the few bright spots of this Flyers team, which he's setting again, which I don't necessarily get, because I think he's a better defenseman than Gustafsson is. But I get the sense that him and Prosser aren't a great pair together, but Prosser also isn't a great defenseman either.
Here's the other issue. The only issue I have.
The only other issue is that you don't want to put
really quickly here. Going back to him, these coaches and again into players, he has a lot of former ties with these guys. Mike Yeo used to be the head coach in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Michel Therrien, I don't know where he came from besides just Montreal and Pittsburgh, but still. Nate Prosser, he used to be in Minnesota last year. Chris Stewart used to be in Minnesota. There's a lot of guys where, again, I'm fine with second chances and everything and whatnot, but it's it's time when a lot of teams pass up on the same people over and over again. There's a reason for it, and again, you got to give it credit to Chuck Fletcher for saying, "Hey, I trust this guy. I like him a lot. Give him credit. I mean, the guy, he's a fantastic, GM and human being.
That's
he's a
another
wonderful
thing too.
guy.
What's good about him is that
it's time to kind of move on and get some fresh faces in here. Not necessarily who's never been in the organization, but one who you've never worked with, especially if they don't if their track records aren't as positive as they once were.
Plus, you lost Friedman, which, I mean, Friedman wasn't the best either, but
he's better than what we currently have for some defensemen.
And the other thing for Fletcher there too, not just the fact that they were together, but he has really made it clear that the thing that really has made it the teams that have won is the teams that have the most amount of depth has won. So he's tried to get as many kind of depth defensemen. Now the Flyers haven't had too many injuries, knock on wood, thankfully, to the blue line. So you never really have to go that deep towards that defensiveness, because don't we still have what's his face? He's running this year.
Don't we have his what's his face? Who's what's his face?
He's on the taxi squad. Not Schlemko.
So you're not talking about Morin, right?
No, I am talking about Pouliot.
What's his?
Derek
Pouliot. Yeah. Hell, bring Pools up. I don't care. He's speed. He can shoot and score the freaking puck.
Yeah, that's just another guy I just put in there that they wanted to focus on kind of depth defensively. But back to Alain Vigneault and those coaches, and you actually brought up a good point and some of that, and that with the Flyers' struggles, you kind of hope, because obviously Alain Vigneault early this season got his 700th win as a head coach, which is great and everything, and he's brought two teams to conference finals. He's never won, but
Stanley Cup
finals. Yes, thank you. But
I got you, AB.
These guys have the experience. It's those things like, well, we brought in a good coach and everything, not only to be good in these moments to bring you to the next level and everything, to bring the best out of you, but also to get you out of ruts. So you're not losing 10 games in a row again, like you were doing a couple seasons back when you were kind of in the rebuild stage. When you were under Hextall, and you were either a very streaky team. Like that was the one thing that happened there. And the whole thing we talked about that was always mentioned last year with the Flyers is the amount of experience they have behind the bench. Yeah, Tarian might not be the best, a power play coach, in my opinion. But, last year did great with the PK. This year hasn't really panned out, but they all had times being head coaches. They've all got experience. They should be the group you want to try to get them out of this little funk they're in. It's just a matter of what they do.
Right.
And I think at the moment it's because for the last, I feel like a month now, the top six has been the same. And I think it's time to change it. I think it's time to kind of change it. And not necessarily completely blow it up. And I was texting you earlier, I think last week, a couple days ago. I forget when. I know it was at work.
At some point.
Yeah. But I was kind of thinking about like lines and defense combinations just to try to get, at least for one game, just to try something. And I think, because I feel like there's a couple of guys that could use a little session with Dr. Sean Couturier. And I feel like
Dr. Coots.
I don't think it's going to hurt if you took JVR and Farabee off that first line, because I don't think at the moment they're first line guys. Yeah, they're hot, and they've been pretty much putting up the whole offense in terms of goals this season for the Flyers. It's just that in terms of shutting down top line people, I don't necessarily trust that line. Farabee is getting better at it, but I don't think it's not necessarily fair, but it's one of those things where I don't know if I really think it's great to, go up against top people, because Panarin, they're barely able to shut them down.
Right, and that
and I
thing
don't
was
even
a
say
nightmare.
take him out of the top 6 because early in the season they were doing well with
He's been
Slaughton at the
literally
center.
one of the Flyers' best players.
So I think at the moment, just for a game, I would try just these lines. I would try just to throw these guys out there. Couturier, Giroux, Voracek for your top line.
Yeah.
I also just think so, just because at least in terms of facing the Islanders in these next 3 games, I feel like that's a good potential line that can kind of maybe keep Barzal at bay a bit.
Yeah.
And it's not just the defense that's been struggling that you can just blame it on. The forwards also have to take some credibility for why that struggle there. Carter Hart also has to play better too, because you can't keep relying on Elliott, because Elliott's either going to start struggling, which he has, or he's going to get hurt. That's why you would really like it if Hart was.
By the way, I want to go over some stats here with you, Witmer. Yes. Two players I want to bring up, actually 3 players I want to bring up who've been playing great and a lot better than what people realize, more than they already know they've been playing great. First, Scott Laughton. Here he has 15 points this year in 24 games, including 7 goals. He only needs 6 more to tie his career high, and this is in 24 games. Last year, he had 27-49. Year before that, his career high of 32 points in 82 games. So, honestly, at the rate he's going to have career highs this year in every category, which would be great. So that's one player. The second player, Joel Farabee, easily has been phenomenal. 24 points, career high in goals and assists, 12 apiece. Goals. I mean, he's 13 assists for his career high, but he already has 24 points already. Again, career high is very young NHL career. He got 21 points last year in 52 games. He's already up to 24 in just 26 this year. A huge leap for him this year. He's been playing great. Last but not least, the guy who's already at 29 points, leading the Flyers, 13 goals, 16 assists, James Van Riemsdyk, who last year put up 40, and his first year back in Philadelphia, 48. So, and they were both in 66 games. So he's going to obviously play in less games this year because it's only 56, 59 like games or so. One of the two for Philadelphia with the short season, of course. But he only needs 11 more points before he tops 40 again. So he's been playing outstanding lately.
I agree. But that's why I don't, because I think JVR and Farabee have great confidence with chemistry with one another throughout this year, and I don't think those two should be separated. So for a game, I would try him just with Kevin Hayes, they're still in the top 6, and I think that why those two have worked so well is because, believe it or not, even though Flyers have had the struggles for years, and no more so than this year, the ability to pass instead of shoot, and those two have been not necessarily shoot first, but they've been the ones that have shot, and it's actually worked out for them. And because of that, you do have a little lack of goal scoring in terms of goals, not necessarily points. Because Giroux, Voracek, and Couturier and Hayes are still putting up some points here and there. It's just mostly on the assist front.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a good line. Then third line, you just I'd put TK, Laughton, and Patrick. I don't really care who's centering, whether it's Patrick or Laughton. And then that fourth line, which I don't know what the best line there is, but I guess for a game,
I don't even know anymore.
Raffle.
I really don't.
Abe Kubel.
Yeah. Also, keep in mind, and this is something we haven't mentioned yet, Robert Haig is out 2 to 4 weeks with a shoulder injury, and he was placed on injured reserve. Alex Lyon, Nate Prosser, and Carson Twarynski all were called from the taxi squad. I would expect Prosser and Twarynski to play in tonight's game. Yeah.
I don't know what to do with the D pairs. The D pairs are just, nothing's really working. So for me, I'm sure I'm probably wrong stat-wise, but I feel like the more consistent defensemen have been Sandheim and Provorov in terms of actually not being completely terrible. And I know you don't want to because they're both left defensemen or whatever. They're both kind of playing on the same side, and they like that kind of left D, right D. But if you say you bring in at home, you're going to have to deal with that anyways. So might as well try it. And I know during that little COVID outbreak they had, those two kind of were forced to be together. But I would try maybe that for a game because everyone else has had a second chance with Provorov at the top pair, except for Sanheim, I feel. So then maybe you do Ghost Myers and while Haig's out, Braun Gustafsson. It's not great, but it's something. And then I just start Carter Hart. I think this is something he's going to have to try to play through his struggles, which the one good thing, and I know a lot of Flyers players or Flyers fans, are on Carter Hart for his kind of struggles and everything. I think we kind of moved
not
on.
only on Carter Hart, but on everyone basically not named Joel Farabee and surprisingly James Van Riemsdyk.
I also think just one last thing on
pretty much everybody.
And then we can move on to the players themselves.
I
think he should utilize that timeout a little more. Because I feel like he outside after that Pittsburgh game where he called that timeout early because the Flyers started off awful, but they came back and won.
Yeah.
He hasn't really called his timeout since then when he realistically could have said, all right, he's got to call this timeout or something just to regroup, and not necessarily that would change things, but I feel like he's got to be a little more involved. Intermissions, you got that time to regroup and everything, but he's got to take on some of the blame and to try to get the best out of these guys some way.
I agree.
And one thing before I get to the players themselves, something I was about to mention earlier in the podcast, which I feel better now because this team I feel like just doesn't have an identity right now. They're missing something.
No.
They don't have their fight and grit. I'm not just saying grit in terms of hitting people because someone had, I forget who tweeted this out, and I completely agree with what they were saying. That it was
talking about.
It was saying that the Flyers didn't have grit, and that grit didn't necessarily mean fighting or hitting people or anything like that. It's board battles. It's forechecking. It's that stuff. It's net front presence. They're
not playing with any heart right now. They look like they just are a bled team right now, and that's what you see was what you get. And so what I thought you were talking about, I'm going to say is someone earlier tweeted out.
This is a while ago. This is like a week ago when this person tweeted it out.
Oh, okay. Someone earlier today tweeted out, if not yesterday, if not today, that during the infamous Flyers Capitals line brawl where the late Ray Emery, went after Braden Holtby, they were down 7-0. Emery had enough, and he went down all the way at the end of the ice and beat the living crap out of Holtby. Now, granted, Holtby wasn't part of that fight, and he didn't really want to be involved with that fight. Understandable, but Emery, he was pissed off, and he showed it, and it went goes to show that
we're still lining. Yeah, let's get him. Get that grit back.
Even though you're down by a lot, it doesn't matter. You got to show something,
Yeah, and also it's not just that they're not really even standing up for one another either. There's been I thought it was going to change after the first Rangers game because there was the one hit on Drew.
Now, and I could be wrong, but it looked like a knee-on-knee hit. I'm probably wrong. I can't tell. I didn't see I just saw the initial replay, but it was ugly.
Yeah, but either way, you had both Patrick and Voracek kind of stand up for him, and I thought maybe after that moment, I thought, oh, maybe this is going to be the time when the Flyers are actually going to start getting that kind of chemistry again, or just that team effort or whatever you want to call it to just get back to what they were last year. And just there's not even that much that's changed since last season to this season outside of Niskanen not being here. After that deadline, those guys and Pitlick are all gone. But it's realistically the same team. So it's what's the issue? Is it just as simple as these guys
Niskanen is on here?
That's not that. That's a good.
No, I know, but I'm saying of all
and
the
I know
issues,
a lot of it also was Oscar Lindblom going through his cancer treatment, and that was a big spark for this team.
Yeah.
But I wonder if one huge spark or one problem is these guys aren't as not necessarily close, but as around each other as much because of COVID protocols and everything. You can only see each other really when you're practicing, morning skates, stuff like that. But realistically, you don't really have that time, not necessarily bonding, but that close-knit kind of ability to gain. And when you do have these meetings, it's through like this, through Zoom, it's video meetings. So I wonder if that, in a way, kind of has been.
You're not wrong. Because again, last year, Kevin Hayes said not even 2 weeks into the season, or even really being there in Philadelphia, it was the tightest team he's ever been on, which was great. And again, you're really missing that team chemistry, bonding, events on and off the ice, and team dinners, everything like that.
I don't think you can throw that out as a possibility.
I think that plays a lot of a bigger factor than people realize.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. It's probably some of the struggles you see on ice and maybe chemistry, stuff like that.
One tweet I want to bring up here from Bill Meltzer, who, and again, this of all the players that he tweeted about, this shows like exactly what you would expect during the debacle through the 2006-2007 season. The Deer franchise history, normally sunny disposition Simone Gagne, of all players, ripped into some nonchalant teammates with a show some effing pride. Current team isn't one that doesn't care, but competitiveness level tonight was unacceptable. Obviously from last night, but still, you get the point.
I can tell you exactly who could be that on the Flyers. And I think you would agree with me, and you're probably thinking the same name, Jake Voracek.
I actually was not, but you're right. Because again, we have seen his fiery side for Jake, and he can get in a very pissed off mood.
And the only reason why I say that is
he's angry. People listen. They shut their mouths and they pay attention. One thing we have said though over the last several weeks now is call up a player from the Phantoms, like Zade Wisdom. I don't care. He's been red hot. Maybe even, I don't even know if he's ready or not, but Max Millen, he's been laying up in the AHL as well. And it never hurts to give these guys a chance just to get some new blood in there. An NHL debut. No one else gets more. Obviously, a rookie gets excited for an NHL debut. They're nervous, but it gets the boys fired up. Let's freaking go, and let's show up and get this guy a victory in his.
And that's why I think
get him a point. Give him a victory or a solo rookie lap. Let's do something to get this team going again. And they're not showing anything. They're not showing any freaking heart at all. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. And realistically, that's why I say it's a whole team effort for trying to get this out of it, from Chuck Fletcher onto guys in the Phantoms. If there's a guy hot in the Phantoms, Chuck Fletcher, call him up. Alain Vigneault, putting him in a situation to succeed. I know one thing that, not that it would have been a big difference, but Margaret Frost getting hurt, even though he is a forward.
I think he would have a much easier time if he wasn't out for the year.
I also think they were probably
how much time we benefit from playing right now.
They were obviously hoping for more from Zamula. I know coming out of camp, they thought he may be a guy that can steal a spot. But the thing with that is that they felt like he wasn't quite ready yet for the NHL, so that made sense.
Yeah.
But it's up to these guys, at least any of them, to step up. Someone's got to light that fuse that gets this team going.